In a strange discovery, a federal investigation had started a day before a disappearance. Was this woman who had allegedly stolen $30 million on the run, or had she been murdered? Where did all of that money go, and who all was involved? Is she watching this today, hiding in the shadows, or did something more sinister occur? You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, but today's case is the story of victims uncovering this scheme to drain them of every ounce of their money and coming to terms with the fact that justice may never be served. I also want to thank our sponsor, Lumi. Lumi is an aluminum-free deodorant that can actually go all over your body. It's crazy. So it's doctor developed and 72-hour odor control for even the most sensitive skin. Sometimes deodorant under the armpits just isn't enough. You need it other places, and so that's why I love Lumi, because you can literally put it anywhere externally on your body. On top of that, Lumi's formula is much different than other deodorants. They actually work to stop the odor from ever happening rather than covering it up once the odor is already out. So ultimately, no matter what you're doing or where you're sweating, Lumi has got you covered. And I know, especially with anxiety and stress, sometimes you get sweaty, and the last thing you want to be worrying about is also how you smell from your sweat because you are anxious or stressed. And so that's why Lumi is so nice to be able to literally put it anywhere and know that you are good to go and you're smelling good. They have multiple different scents as well. So Lumi's starter pack comes with a full-size stick deodorant, a cream deodorant tube, and 2 free products, all while shipping free to the US. Lumi is also giving you guys an extra 40% off with the code Brooke if you order at lumi.deals/Brooke. Now let's get back to the story. So it was actually 2020 in Australia, and the Caddick family lived in Sydney, New South Wales. This was 49-year-old Melissa and her younger husband Anthony, as well as Melissa's son from a previous marriage who was 15 at this point. Now they lived in a beautiful home worth $6 million in the Dover Heights suburb that overlooked the Sydney Harbour. Melissa had been born Melissa Grimley on April 21st of 1971 to Barbara and Ted. She was said to be a normal girl in a middle-class family. She wanted to be a ballerina. She loved fashion. She had friends, and she was said by those friends to be always in the coolest group. She made it a part of her journey to always get to that coolness that other people had, or that she felt other people had, and that she was constantly trying to be the best that she could be. She went to a business course right out of high school, and that is when she then went on to the University of Technology Sydney to earn a degree in finance. So in 2000, when Melissa was 29, she married her first husband, who was Tony Caddick. Now this is not the same as the Anthony we spoke of that she's married to in 2020. This was her first husband, who was named Tony. Now Tony was the man that Melissa had her son with, and they were together for quite some time and actually moved locations several times, but Melissa would confess that he was very controlling and abusive, and she was happy to be out of that situation. They had divorced in 2013, and Melissa had gone on to marry Anthony that same year, and they were said to be very, very happy together. They had actually met because Melissa and Anthony had been in a salon together. Anthony was a hairdresser, and Melissa had had her hair done by him all of the time. And so everyone around Anthony and Melissa said that they were madly in love. He treated her like a queen. The family was actually quite wealthy at this time. Melissa was their breadwinner, and she had worked her way up to be a successful investment banker. She had started as a financial advisor for Wise Financial Services and actually ended up buying 25% stake of the business. Not only was she successful, but she was also well known, well respected. She was even chosen to be a magazine cover shoot for the Independent Financial Advisor magazine. And Melissa was known to help anyone that she could with investments, with savings, with their money, and for them to have the same lavish lifestyle that her family members loved and weren't afraid to show. She helped her new friends, her old friends, as well as family members as well. The family had everything they could have ever wanted, yet on November 12th of 2020, Melissa would disappear. Now, her second husband, Anthony, who lived with her at the time, would report her missing, but this was a total of 30 hours after he said that she might have vanished. Anthony believed that she would come home, but she never did. Melissa's son claimed that when she actually went missing was that November 12th, and that at 5:30 a.m. he had heard somebody opening and shutting the front door, but he figured it was just his mom going out for a daily run, and so he went back to sleep and didn't think much of it. Anthony and her son claimed that this was a daily thing, that she did this before doing any work, but she never came back, and so investigators went to the home where Anthony was still there and began to ask if they could look around.
Hey, Anthony.
Yes.
G'day, I'm Sergeant Riley. I'm the one who spoke to you on the phone.
Yeah, coming up to see the paperwork.
No worries. Yeah, mate, I'm just a bit concerned. Can we go upstairs and have a chat? Yeah. Oh, mate, I'm just a bit worried about where your wife might be, and I really need you to give me the full info about what's happened, because I'm, like I said, I'm worried.
I got everything you need.
Because you told me on the phone that you last saw her yesterday at 5:30 in the morning, but now you're telling my offsiders here it was midnight last night. So when did you last see her?
12 o'clock on...
Last night?
I guess that's Wednesday night.
Wednesday night?
Yes.
So it's now Friday? So it wasn't 12 o'clock last night?
No.
Right.
No.
Okay.
She's been gone 24 hours, over 24 hours now.
What time did the police come here, the federal police, on Wednesday?
6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier, possibly. On Wednesday it was, and she's gone missing the next day on Thursday at 5:30. And that's the last we saw of her. I woke up at close to 6. Everything that you need is on the video cameras to see where she went, whichever direction it is, and the federal police have everything.
Right.
So that's what's going to help you. I suggested up that way. I know that we go there a lot. She loves that spot.
So what spot is that?
If you want to cut off the bad stuff, I would check that. So it's Rodney Reserve, straight ahead there.
Rodney Reserve.
Yes.
And that overlooks the cliff, does it?
The cliffs, yes.
Right. Okay.
That's where we used to go. I've been there a few times since and checked. All day yesterday I checked. Nothing.
Righto.
Like I said, her next meeting is here at 5 o'clock, which I'd highly doubt she's going to make. She didn't even make her best friend meeting at 12:30, so...
Is that her phone?
Yes. So she's gone out with nothing, like no keys, like no money, no nothing.
Anthony was telling them that Melissa had left everything behind. Her keys to her car was still there, clothes, her wallet, and her phone were all inside the home, and he said that if she would have taken anything, it would have been her phone. That is when they saw that there was surveillance cameras outside of their home. And so they obtained this footage, and they realized that the cameras had actually been disabled. So there was nothing on the tapes, and nothing had been recording, at least that day that she vanished. And that is when cameras all over the neighborhood that they were in Dover Heights were seized as well, because there were certain cameras that faced the property. And so they figured if Melissa had left, they could see her leaving. However, with all of this footage, no footage showed her walking down any streets away from her home. It was as though she was a ghost. So that officer went to the home, and they were kind of asking Anthony for a tour. Anthony was taking them on this tour. They took them down to the cellar where there was actually this wine closet that they went inside, and Anthony was saying, oh, she didn't take any of this. And then they went to another room that was locked, and he unlocked it, and they asked him, why is this room locked? And he said, you can't be too careful these days. And that is when the questioning of Anthony really began. And when they were really pressuring him to tell them more, Anthony did begin to cry.
Look, I'm okay. Like, I'm fine. Like I said, if you can find her, that's the only thing you can do for me.
Righto.
However, the officer said that the tears didn't seem real. To the investigators, he seemed quite evasive, but he was also giving them everything they wanted anytime they asked. And one officer even said that Anthony was unlike any person they had ever taken a missing report from. He was just acting quite strange. However, they also wanted to tread sensitively if this was just a man whose wife had gone missing and he had nothing to do with it. Now, within those 30 hours, there was a day where Anthony did not tell investigators or anybody that he couldn't find Melissa. So they asked him, what were you doing that day? And he had said that he went out scoping the cliffs above the ocean in a place called the Gap, and that he had texted the house cleaner pretending to be Melissa, saying that she didn't need to come that day, and he also called her best friend, who was also her brother Adam. It wasn't really specified what exactly that Anthony and Adam were talking about, but Anthony said that he did not tell Adam at this point that she was missing because he wanted to get Adam's own thoughts about what could have happened before he made any assumptions. Now, Anthony had also told investigators exactly what he believed Melissa was wearing that day when she left for her jog or whatever she was doing that morning, if that was her who left. And he had told them exactly what clothing it was, even though he said he had not actually seen her or knew what she was wearing, and she had a closet full of clothes that wouldn't really help him with that. But he also said that she had an appointment at Dior the day that she disappeared and that she wouldn't have missed this.
So they're kind of like that deal.
Okay. What colour are they?
I think they're silver like that, but not a shiny silver. It's like a pastel silver, like a like a shimmer silver, more like probably this part of it here.
Yep.
But that's the sneakers that she's got on. If she's gone for a walk, she's got these on. She does that every morning, like she trains and stuff like that.
So she's got a second pair. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. But like I said, I didn't think anything of it in the morning because I just thought, oh, she's gone for a walk. That's what she does. So it wasn't until I got back and I saw her phone sitting there on the floor and I was like...
So when did you contact the AFP about it?
This morning.
Righto.
They were the first people I contacted because, like I said, they're the ones that know everything and they've got all of the information. So if you need to get anything, you need to get it off them.
Yeah.
They have everything.
Josh!
When you said before that she stays in the city if she's got an appointment.
Well, she travels like to Melbourne to like she's totally capable. But if her accounts are frozen, what can you do?
Yeah. But before, when you said that she'd stayed in the city if she's got appointments with journalists and stuff, do you know which hotel that was?
She's always stayed in Meriton, like I said.
In Bondi Junction or in the city?
Bondi Junction, right across from the Westfields. Like we've stayed there before. Like that's our go-to.
This is better than the Meriton, though.
Well, it is, but this was pre this.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anthony did have a theory, though. He claimed that Melissa could be at a hotel called the Meriton in Bondi Junction because this is somewhere where Melissa and Anthony would often go. And they went to search this hotel. The records show there was no one under Melissa's name or anyone looking suspicious who was there. So 6 days after her disappearance, Anthony and Melissa's brother Adam actually held a press conference along with officers asking to have Melissa return to them or for Melissa to come home. And this was actually only after investigators asked Anthony to do so. He wasn't very forthcoming with information or ways to help. He was just kind of doing what they had asked of him. Now, at this press conference, Anthony was asked if he knew what happened to her, and he was saying he had nothing more to give them. He just needed them to help him.
You know how much we love you. You just come home, everything's taken care of, you're not in trouble.
Melissa, please let us know that you're safe and sound. We love you.
She always took her phone. In this case, it was the only time since I've known her that she did not have her phone with her.
We just don't know where Melissa is. We don't know what's happened, and we really, really want to find her.
We just want her back. That's all.
Now, there were water and air searches that revealed nothing, and the possible crime scene of the home was searched a month after she vanished. There was no blood, there was no cleaning of blood found, and so they didn't believe it was actually the crime scene. And CCTV footage from the neighborhood was obtained. They had it from just, the day she had gone missing and then a few days afterwards. However, they obtained at this point for weeks prior to her disappearance because they wanted to see how true her routine really was. They were beginning to wonder if this was even something that Melissa did. And what they found didn't really shock them at this point because they found that Melissa didn't ever go running. This was not something that she would do every morning especially, but they didn't find her doing this at all for at least a month prior. However, Anthony had drilled this in as her daily routine, and he began to look more and more suspicious. They then told him that they believed that he was not telling the whole story. Meanwhile, investigators were quickly realizing that Melissa was not an innocent woman. In fact, she might not have been a victim at all. Now, this came about because they wondered why the surveillance cameras were disabled. Well, this was because a day prior to her disappearance, that previous day, her home was being raided by federal investigators. Now, these tapes were taken in as evidence along with many other items in her home. These officers were searching her home, asking her for pricing of items that she had. They went through drawers of jewelry, of art, of clothing, but Melissa was said to be greatly lowering the prices of everything that she had. She was saying that the jewelry pieces she had were only $80 to $100 when they were actually designer and worth thousands. So much cash was found as well, just kind of laying about the home.
So are there any items listed on there that are on the premises?
Yes.
Yes. What items are they?
Phones, jewellery, computers, storage devices, records,
Okay. And where are most of these located?
all over the house.
All over the house. Okay.
We also want to seize any items of jewellery that are currently being worn by Melissa.
These belong to Anthony. These belong to me.
Yep.
Belongs to me.
What would you consider high value?
For each piece.
Yeah.
The necklaces are 80 to 100.
Is there anything more expensive than those?
No.
1,000. Ms. Caddick, are there any particularly high value items here, just in terms of, now say, storage?
So they're all high value.
Now, this did all seem like normal items to have for a successful woman, right? Well, this woman was not all that she seemed. This raid continued for 12 hours, with Melissa taking a nap in the middle of it. But Melissa's mother and her husband, Anthony, claimed that Melissa was seriously distressed the entire time the raid was happening, that they wouldn't allow her to leave or eat. But these investigators said, oh, she was definitely able to leave and eat. She was able to roam her home, leave anytime she wanted. But Melissa's mother blamed them for her disappearance. Now, this made more sense as to why they had found a sticky note on Melissa's phone that was still inside the home that was from Anthony that said, Melissa, I know our love is deeper than possessions. Thought you might like one of your Christmas presents early. All my love. And so this made a little more sense because all of her belongings had been taken. And now this note was found, but the earrings next to it, or allegedly next to it, were not found. And Anthony was asked about this and he said he just wanted to make her feel better after everything had been taken from her. And he said that he believed that his wife had died due to negligence, cruelty, and inhumanity during the raid. But this raid led them down a very shady past with so many twists and turns that were completely unexpected. You see, it turned out that Melissa's life was much different than it ever seemed. It wasn't just who she was as a person, it was her entire life, her career, her being. Because with Melissa's first husband, who was Tony Caddick, whom she still had the last name of, he was a builder, or a builder's laborer from England, and they happily got married in Australia. They had their son, and then Tony went back to school to be a lawyer after Melissa had urged him to. Now, when their son was 4, they actually moved to Essex, England for Tony's job, and Tony also wanted to be closer to his family who lived there. Now, this is where it's said that everything began to change in their relationship because Melissa no longer wanted to be in England. She found it quite boring. So she began to ask Tony if she could travel to brush up on her financial skills at a conference that was in Switzerland. Now, she had gone, but Tony would later find out that Melissa had an entirely different plan because she had used that money, Tony's money, to fly herself and her secret boyfriend to Paris to have a little rendezvous. This was Anthony, her second husband. Anthony and Melissa had not met after her divorce or during her divorce. They had met while they were still married, and they had begun an affair. When she arrived back home, Tony confronted her about this, and Melissa didn't apologize. She only cleaned out the house in Essex, took their son, and went back to America, but not before draining out their bank accounts, leaving her first husband, Tony, with nothing. Now, Tony has claimed that everything that Melissa said about him was a lie, that their relationship was never abusive at all, and that she just up and left him with literally nothing. She even got the house that they had in America, and he had to start from scratch. She then went on to marry this much younger Anthony, and Anthony was a hairstylist, like I said, but he kind of quit that job, did that on the side, and became a full-time DJ staying at home with Melissa's son, while Melissa allegedly made the millions, at least to everybody else. During the time of the divorce from her first husband and the marriage of her second husband, Melissa's brother Adam said that Melissa was very distraught. She was saying that it was all getting too much for her, and that he'd find her at the Gap, which is an ocean cliff known for suicide. Strangely enough, this was the same exact place that Anthony had gone when he was not calling Melissa in as missing that day. So the question was Anthony involved in what led to this raid? Well, at first, I should probably tell you exactly what led to the raid. When it came to her career, the cons began early. Her first job in the field, it actually ended after 6 months because she was found to have stolen $2,000 from the company by forging her boss's signature on checks. Now, this could have been the end of a blossoming con woman, except they didn't press any charges. They told her if she just left, they wouldn't have to get the police involved because it was $2,000, and to them that wasn't a lot of money. So she went on to get another job in finance because she was not blacklisted. Nobody ever knew what she did before. So this is where she got that job at Wise, and she bought 25% of the stake, and she was able to do this by borrowing $750,000 to do so. Ultimately, even though she was very successful or seemed successful in this job, she would be let go by Wise because she was found to be recommending property and sharing with her clients. I don't really know much about the finance world, but it was just not something that Wise liked to do, and so they kind of clashed, and at this point Melissa didn't have a job. Well, not until she created one. You see, when Melissa was let go from Wise, she began living this extremely lavish life. Her family were going on trips that cost thousands of dollars. It would be worth a yearly salary for most, and many didn't know how she was paying for this and would often ask, especially her friends and family. And Melissa would actually tell them she was actually given an $86 million severance package. And others were told that she was given a large payout for a sexual harassment claim, but neither were actually found to exist, but nobody knew that at this point. The only money that Melissa had actually received from her job was the $750,000 that she had paid to buy that stake in the company. But because Melissa looked so wealthy and successful, those around her began to believe in the facade. So, after she, got her 2 homes in Sydney, she was buying luxury cars, designer clothes, expensive artwork, and jewelry. They began to want the same things. And Melissa was telling them that she could create the same in their lives through investments. And no one objected. So by 2020, a year before her divorce from her first husband, Melissa began to take on clients and invest their money under a company called Maliver. Now, no friends and family were excluded, even her own parents. Most of her clients would invest all of their savings, and some were not wealthy individuals. There were some that invested millions, but some that didn't even have $1 million to invest. But either way, Melissa would take them on. They were trusting her with everything they had. Melissa was given millions. With all of her clients combined, it's said to be from about 25 to 30 million in total. And everything looked normal at first. She would give them portfolios, she would give them account numbers, statements, she would tell them how much they were actually making, and they weren't said to actually be losing anything in these investments. These clients had faith in the woman who was stealing their savings. This continued for the next 7 years between 2012 and 2019, but by 2019, that is when ASIC were uncovering what they believed to be a Ponzi scheme. Now, a Ponzi scheme is basically an investment fraud that pays investors with funds collected by new investors so they appear as though they are getting something, but really it's just a circle that's going round and round. No money is actually being made or invested, it's being stolen. Now, the ASIC is the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, and they believed that Melissa was exploiting the incomes of her crimes in order to acquire all the trappings of wealth. And by 2019, her business was booming, which is how they knew they needed to stop it immediately. She had made more money than ever that year, and that is when they started getting these tips every once in a while, with people saying that Melissa was approaching them for investments and that something felt very off. So after a year of investigating, so it went from 2019 to 2020, the ASICs raided her home with 21 officers, seizing all of her expensive items, documents, business papers, and also recording her as they did this. The day after, she was gone. And so this ASIC lead investigator has been saying, I am not to blame for this disappearance. Everything was done professionally, and this is something that happens, all the time that we have to investigate. It's not something that we did just for Melissa. Meanwhile, many of Melissa's clients believed in her and how she was helping them, and they would often thank her until this very moment when she wasn't returning home. She left them all behind and she took their money. And that is when the manipulation that Melissa had them under began to lose its grip of all of her victims.
And the story was that she'd worked for another company, that her and 2 other people had built this program, and it was such an amazing program that one of the superannuation houses bought it out, but her share of that money was $86 million, and she was not allowed to work in the industry for 10 years, which she didn't.
And the reason that she was coming back into the industry was only with her friends, because, I've made a lot of money, I just want to help my friends out. And
oh, so she was working for you out of the goodness of her heart.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one of her lines.
Yes.
And, I just deal with people I want to deal with, mainly friends, and, take care of them and give them a nice life too, sort of thing. Yeah, right.
Now, through different documentaries, we really got to see a few of the victims and their personal stories. And so I wanted to tell a little bit of that. Nobody deserves to have their money ripped out from under them, under the guise that somebody's going to help. So a beautiful couple named Cheryl and Faye had been longtime friends of Melissa. In fact, I believe childhood friends. And they were honest workers who made an average wage, and they had a good chunk of savings in their account for retirement. And they were really looking forward to using it. And so Melissa told them that she would help them make it an even larger sum, that she really wasn't working at the time because she didn't need to. She had made too much money, and so she was helping them out of the goodness of her heart. So they invested all of their $800,000. And once they realized what occurred, thinking back to every meeting with Melissa, they realized that Melissa was always licking her lips when she was talking to them, and they could never realize. It was weird. They didn't know why this was happening. And after, looking back through everything, they realized that this was Melissa's tell for lying, because everything she said to them was a lie.
Some of the early coverage of this suggested, it was all these high flyers who'd lost their money. It's just honest workers. Like, you guys are hardly millionaires.
No, far from it. And I worked my last couple of years working pretty hard to put away a little bit more so that I had a comfortable retirement. I wasn't relying on the government.
That was our hard-earned money that funded her lifestyle in a frivolous way. That I think the part for me shows from her point of view a lack of respect for all the things that we had to do to earn that money.
Now, Melissa made friends with another woman. There's a new friend. This was a sweet woman named Michelle Leslie.
Oh, well, her thing was, I like to help women. to get them started. Oh, and I guess what? I happened to have 7 spots to bring some more people in. As people go, she'd bring somebody else in.
So she gave the idea of scarcity effectively.
Yes,
I've only got a couple of spots. If you're quick, if you're lucky,
correct.
you can invest with me.
And so with Michelle being close friends with Melissa, Melissa was always one to share her wealth, you know, say anything from my closet you can take, you can wear. They were like, okay, let's do this. So Michelle and her husband Billy invested their retirement with her, all of it.
So I was going to catch up with her Wednesday morning before ASICs raided the house and discuss what was going to happen for Christmas Day. And then that didn't happen. I received a text probably 6:30 a.m. in the morning, and sorry, can't catch up today, I'll get back to you. And then, I don't know, I felt like there was something wrong, and I sent another text, are you okay? Sent an email, and then still nothing. And I said to Billy, I said, something's going on, something's not right. And then we hear about it in the paper 6 days later that she's been missing.
Even then, Michelle said she was more worried about her friend going missing than her money. She wasn't thinking that Melissa had done something horrible with her money. She was just thinking, where is my friend?
It was like missing 6 days. Sinister sort of implications, and I think you grieved for her.
Yeah, I did.
And since then, Michelle and Billy have actually had to sell their home and move to a more modest house in a less expensive area and completely start their lives over. Now, another victim, Joanna, remembers that Melissa was a childhood friend and she'd actually invited herself to Joanna's 50th birthday party. And Joanna says, looking back, every single person at that party was being taken advantage of by Melissa. In fact, Joanna's family had given her $10 million. Joanna said that Melissa would just stare at her, look her in the eyes as Joanna was praising her and thanking her for everything, like she didn't care. But these were only 3 victims, and there are said to be 60 families involved in this who lost their money. Another one being her own 80-year-old parents who invested $1 million with her because they thought she was going to invest it in property. These were all people who were hearing from Melissa that they were never going to lose their money in the investments. And as the news spread of this raid that had occurred just a day prior to Melissa vanishing, the clients then began to snap out of it. And this no longer became about how sad for my friend, it became about what in the world is going on. They began to look into the actual paper trails, get their own lawyers, and they were all shocked when they learned that these accounts didn't even exist. Their money was gone.
So what happened when you called ComSec about these investments?
When I called them and told them the account number, they then said there was no such account number. And it's the first real point in time that I allowed myself to believe that everything Melissa had told us was a lie.
Dirty, rotten scoundrel. It was hard to stomach. Probably not really the person I thought she was. Now, with as much that I know, yeah, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
What for you has been harder, that idea that you've been betrayed as a friend?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Not that's worse than losing the money.
Probably both. First of all, it was the betrayal. Just to go, oh my God, just the lies and the stories this lady spun. I wonder if she just did it to everybody like that. Must have.
Is it quite possible that they'll never find all this money again?
You know, in the 35, 40 years that I've been doing this business, we always look for a war chest or treasure chest. And the best that we can recover at times is only about 20% of what has been stolen. 20% to 25% is the best case scenario of recovery. Yeah. And often, it's not that the money's been kept and secured somewhere, it's just been spent in high living.
And that is the thing, it wasn't that Melissa was holding all $30 million in her account, just waiting to spend it. It was gone as in she had spent that money. Because a legal team found that this money was transferred to accounts, but they were all under Melissa Caddick. They were only for her. She began to use this money to fund her high-rolling lifestyle, and out of the $30 million, only $700,000 hadn't been withdrawn. She had spent this money on loans on her home's overseas vacation. She spent nearly $300,000 on Christian Dior, $200,000 on designer jewelry, $25,000 on protein shakes, and other obscure things like that. Could she have really spent that $30 million on her own in 7 years, or was there hope that the money was still out there in an account they had not found yet? It was then found that Melissa had not even graduated from the University of Technology, Sydney with a finance degree. There was no record of completion at all under her name. She had not even attended. Her license she worked under was completely fraudulent. It did belong to someone. It would belong to an old friend of hers, whom she'd asked to borrow the license from, and that person said no. So she stole it. Now, Melissa was also using an accountant for her own money that could have been seeing all of this that was happening, the shadiness, but he actually refuses to talk to anyone about what he saw or how he was involved. But Melissa's father-in-law, Rodo, who was Anthony's father, his name was actually found on several different documents for this Maliver business. And many rumors began to emerge saying that Rodo killed Melissa. However, Rodo claimed that he never ever signed anything, that she had to have forged it because he was a justice of the peace, or basically a judge. And a justice was needed to witness signatures of clients, but she was forging those. So she just decided to forge his name as well. He says he has no involvement with the business, nor did he ever. Those signatures don't even look like his signatures. And he had no involvement with the disappearance either, and his son Anthony didn't either.
Have you ever done any work for Melissa's business, Maliver?
Absolutely not. I've never been asked, but I never would do it anyway.
You know your signature turns up in some of her business's documents.
Shouldn't.
Does that look like your signature?
I've never looked at it. That is not my signature. If you see my signature, it's very distinctive, and that is not it. Not mine.
In fact, Rodo said he didn't believe that his son even had the capacity to understand anything about a financial scheme.
Do you think your son Anthony was capable of helping mastermind a plot like this?
Well, no, I don't. Anthony is a hairdresser, a damn good hairdresser, but I don't believe he has the capacity to know what a financial scheme is. I don't think he could have been in it at all or known what was going on. Even if he didn't know what was going on, he would believe everything he was told.
Do you think Anthony's in denial?
I believe he is in denial, delusional denial. He doesn't want to believe that the woman he loves and married is capable of it, but unfortunately the proof's stacking up.
These families that were turned to victims were getting very angry at this point. They said that Melissa smiled at them, spoke to them like she cared, that this was never a business relationship. They trusted her like family. That's why they did this in the first place. And they began to describe her as a narcissist, looking back on her behavior, and many want them in a jail cell for what she did. But unfortunately, we'd have to find her first.
What a level of entitlement, hey?
Yeah.
There was a level of entitlement, and yeah, you know what? She was probably just sitting there smiling at all of us.
Smiling because the joke, unfortunately, was on you.
Yeah.
But how do you stand there in front of someone and play a role, have a facade where you care, you're a friend, you're talking about each other's family, you're catching up, you're having personal conversations, relaying your personal things. It's not a business relationship. And how do you maintain that facade when all the while you're actually taking them to the cleaners? That's the bit that I struggle with.
With the full picture now, how do you describe her personality?
Oh, narcissist. Evil woman. I hope you're watching, Melissa.
Do you think she is?
Yeah, for sure. She'll be watching.
What do you say to her?
Oh, Melissa. Can't wait to see you in a jail cell.
Investigators in Sydney are looking into this. They have said they have found that they have tips from all over the world, different sightings, but nothing has actually been helpful. They've also said that Anthony has begun to ask the clients, the victims of Melissa, if they will give him and Melissa's son $50,000. No, $500,000, not $50,000, $500,000 monthly allowance to live on, as he has $1 in his bank account, and that is it. The $1 was confirmed. He did just have $1, but he was asking the victims who had already lost money to pay him a monthly allowance. Now about this son, he was 15, and investigators have said that they've tried to talk to him a bit and that he's quite calm during the whole thing, which is odd, but he has been very truthful the whole time, or so they think, and so they don't think he really knows much. Anthony's continued to say that he believes that everything Melissa did was legit and that he thinks Melissa was set up, and he wants to sue everyone who raided their home. In fact, he didn't even ask Melissa why they were raiding the home in the first place when they got there. He didn't have any questions. He just let them do it. Did this mean he actually knew what was going on and didn't have to question? Or did he just simply not care? At this point, investigators were saying that if she was on the run, it would be the perfect time, because at this time it was 2020. It was the peak of COVID. She would be able to just wear a mask, walk outside, and blend in, and a lot of people weren't even leaving their homes at this time. So it would have been harder to actually identify her, and experts say that the people like Melissa always have an exit plan. They always know what to do next. And they also say that if this was a suicide, it's strange that the body wouldn't be found, because people in that state of mind don't necessarily always focus on where to hide their body, and most are found quickly. However, like we've spoken about with women, it is a bit different because women seem to think it out a bit. Would I want my family members to find me? And they're just a bit more subtle with their ways of suicide. So investigators were really trying to get Melissa home. So they went on TV to say that Melissa is not a fugitive and she would not be under arrest if she just turned herself in today.
We just don't know where Melissa is. We don't know what's happened, and we really, really want to find her. She's not wanted by any court. She's not a fugitive, which is the word that people would use. She can go back, see her husband and her son.
Investigators claim that she would be a free woman even if she showed up at a police department still alive. But then, in 2021, something was found. On February 26th of 2021, a press conference was held by the New South Wales Police Force. They began to say that they had evidence in the Caddick case.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined by Detective Inspector Gretchen Atkins of the Eastern Suburbs Police Area Command, and I want to provide you all with details of a significant breakthrough in the investigation into the disappearance of Melissa Caddick, but we'll recap a few points if you'll bear with me. As you're all aware, Melissa was last seen physically at her home address in Dover Heights on Wednesday the 11th of November last year. During that day, a search warrant was executed by the Australian Securities Investment Commission, or ASIC, which concluded that evening. Police have been informed that around 5:30 a.m. the following day, the front door of her home was heard to close by her son, who believed that it was Melissa leaving to go for a run. At that time, Melissa left her personal belongings, which included her mobile phone, wallet and keys. The next morning, Melissa Caddick was reported missing to police. As a result, a missing person investigation was launched, which involved police from the Eastern Suburbs Police Area Command, the State Crime Command Missing Persons Registry and other resources. Appeals for information yielded numerous inquiries, which have been followed up without any confirmed sightings of Melissa from the time of her reported disappearance. Part of those investigations included extensive land, air and sea searches. During the course of those searches, our Marine Area Command provided advice to investigators based on offshore drift modelling that raised the possibility that an object or a body that entered the water around the Dover Heights area could drift as far south as the Bermagui area. I can now inform you that last Sunday the 21st of February, a shoe was located on the shoreline of the Bordana National Park south of Tathra by campers. Within that shoe were the remains of a human foot. That foot and the shoe which matched the size and description of a shoe that Melissa Caddick was seen wearing during the execution of the ASIC search warrant, were conveyed to the New South Wales Health, Forensic and Science Services section here in Sydney, where DNA from the foot was last night matched to a DNA sample from Melissa Caddick's toothbrush and from family members. Melissa's family were informed of the identification last night and are obviously distressed.
This was found on Mbanda Beach, which was a quiet, secluded area. It was a beach that not a lot of people knew about or went to. A shoe had washed up, and this appeared to be the same one that Melissa was wearing the day she vanished. It matched her shoe size as well, but this shoe was found with human remains inside. It was the human foot, and so through DNA from a toothbrush, they matched it. And this foot was officially connected to Melissa Caddick. The beach was thoroughly searched for more remains or more evidence to be found, but nothing was found. So experts had found through the foot that they believed it had been floating from 3 to 7 days before washing up. Now, this 3 to 7 days didn't really make sense because Melissa had been missing for 3 months at this point. This beach was also 400 kilometers or 248 miles from her home. Did this mean that Melissa had taken her life? Where was the rest of her body? And taking the route from her home to this beach, no CCTV footage anywhere captured her on this entire 248-mile journey. Now, the clients that we spoke of prior, who were Michelle and Billy, who lost everything, they believe that Melissa could still be alive, even with the foot being found.
When you heard the news about Melissa and the discovery?
Oh, my first reaction is, it's only a foot. Where's the rest of the body? Is there some evidence to say she's actually dead? And then when I looked back at it and then saw that it was only a foot, I've gone, she's capable of anything. Maybe it's just something that she wanted to put out there to calm everything down. If you find a foot, that means that she must be dead, but who would know?
I mean, it does feel extremely unlikely, but you honestly think she's capable of throwing out
Absolutely.
a red herring like that?
Absolutely. Yep.
But investigators had found that the area where Melissa's foot was found was someplace that Melissa knew well. Not everybody knew of this area, but Melissa did because she would go on school camping trips there when she was a kid. And a friend of Melissa's did come forward to say that she was under extreme financial pressure. Now, this friend seemingly knew the truth about what Melissa was doing by saying this, but they said that they had once walked with Melissa to the cliffs that were in their suburb of Dover Heights. They had cliffs there too, and Melissa said, if I'm going to end it, it's going to be here. She also allegedly had an insurance policy covering suicide as well, so it wasn't completely something they could just mark out and move on from. But the question still remained, was it a suicide? Was she murdered by a client who had figured out what she was doing and realized she didn't have the money to return it to them? Did Anthony kill her after realizing what she had done when the people came and raided the home? Did he think if he got rid of her, he would get to keep the money? Did he have more involvement in this scheme than anybody knew? Did he actually know whose money he was spending when they were all spending very lavishly? Or was Melissa killed by someone who worked with her on this scheme and who didn't want her to out them to these federal investigators? Could this foot have been a red herring to throw investigators off of her trail? Is she still on the run, hiding somewhere with stolen money in one foot? Nobody knew the answers. So at this point, an inquest into Melissa's death was held. The police were reprimanded during this inquest for tunnel vision because they believed Melissa was simply running away from her debts and a possible conviction and jail time. But Anthony was up in the witness box for some of this, and he was not a suspect, but a witness, and they began to ask him questions about the day prior to her disappearance, that morning, the days after, and all of his inconsistent statements. He did admit that he has come to realize that Melissa was a fraudster, that she had done all of this, and that it was wrong. And then he admitted to giving untruthful information about her routine. However, he said that he wasn't lying. He just said that she did exercise every day, but he didn't know that they meant going outside to run every day. The questions kept coming at him. They were really just trying to get anything from this man. And suddenly, he was saying, "Your questions are confusing. The way you talk is not how my mind works." And he was not able to understand any of the questions. He was then allowed to step down for a break, and when he came back, he was told to step down permanently because they didn't think he was giving truthful answers. But during his questioning, Melissa's brother, Adam, he was there, and he was called out for being a distraction. Basically, he was sitting in the courthouse making faces, and he was being dramatic and distracting. And so they were saying, "You can either stop or leave." And he walked out of the courthouse because Adam believed that Anthony had nothing to do with this. At this point, the ASIC lead investigator did take the stand because she was saying she was being blamed for Melissa's death by her family. And Anthony was even going around putting up posters saying that the ASIC equaled woman slaughter. They were beginning to fear his behavior after he wrote a song saying, "Just waiting for the coroner's report to tell me what I already know. My wife died as the direct result of an ASIC investigation."
A Sydney mother has died during an ASIC investigation. ASIC incompetence hindered her disappearance, preventing New South Wales police and her husband any chance of finding her alive.
Oh my God, he took like 30 hours.
You should never judge a man. You couldn't last 60 minutes in my shoes, princess.
Like I said, he was a rapper. He began turning this entire thing into an album. But the ASIC lead investigator, she was a woman, and she said that the only reason that they were looking into Melissa in the first place was because a woman named Dominique Agaliv came to them and said that Melissa was using somebody else's financial services license. And around this time, the ASIC also heard that Melissa had hired a document shredding company. So they began to research more, and it was leading to a Ponzi scheme. An oceanographer was brought in to talk about this foot and the possibilities and if it made it a suicide or not, and an oceanographer told the inquest that it was possible that Michelle had gone into the water where she vanished at her home, over the Dover Heights cliffs there, and floated through the water before her body was caught or snagged on something, and then her foot got away and ended up washing up. He believed that ultimately her body could still be in the ocean, and just because they haven't found it doesn't mean she's not dead. And the next statement from police was actually completely unheard of before this inquest. They told the court that forensic experts wanted to use dead pigs with tracking devices, some wearing running shoes, to throw them in the ocean and see if their feet came back, or if sharks ate them, or, just the circumstances in which their bodies would be found or wouldn't be found. It's unknown if these tests actually occurred. And an orthopedic surgeon was brought in, and he said he didn't actually believe that this foot could have been self-amputated. He said that it would be extremely difficult for a non-medically trained person to do this. It would risk infection and too much blood loss. And the original coroner who had found this foot said that the foot was too decomposed to determine the actual cause of the separation from the body. A psychiatrist was then brought in to talk a bit about Melissa and her narcissistic personality. And the psychiatrist was saying that Melissa would have felt a danger of losing her work and respect of others, and that this could ultimately destroy her life. The psychiatrist said, given that she appeared to largely measure her self-worth through perceptions of others, this would have resulted in a significant narcissistic injury to her self-esteem and potentially caused a catastrophic level of shame and despair. Psychiatrists said that people like her have been known to take their own life over a major insult to their self-esteem. Another psychiatrist had actually said that she could be suffering from compulsive buying disorder, or basically shopping addiction, that some women can develop after gaining financial independence. That was supposed to shed some light on how this could be a suicide and a little bit into why she could be the person that she is, but I actually found further evidence of why this could have all occurred, which we will share in a little bit. But the inquest is still ongoing today. It's a very recent case, and at this point nothing has been ruled out in Melissa's disappearance. Still to this day, nobody knows if this was a suicide, a murder, or a fake death and a woman on the run. All we know is that most likely we may never recover all of the money or the truth. As far as the $30 million though, some of these millions were later found to be invested by Melissa, for Melissa, but this meant that she didn't spend it all. These victims may be able to get some of their money returned from this, and obviously not all of it, because Melissa did spend thousands, if not millions, that can't be returned. But it was found that her home could be sold to get $5 million more back to the victims, and her luxury cars were sold for $361,000 that will be going back. Many have asked, including Anthony, if he will get any money because, you know, of course, everything was taken from them and they didn't know about it. And Anthony will actually get none of this, even though he has been said to be very close to homelessness. Many believe that he had no involvement in anything, and he did do an interview saying that he believes somebody killed his wife. He said that a lot of people stare him down in the streets like he's a criminal, that he hardly leaves his home, and he is extremely distressed for Melissa's clients. After much fighting from Anthony though, the home that they were living in has been put on the market. Anthony was saying that he needed the home to support Melissa's son, but Melissa's son's biological father, Tony, has said that he, pays for lots of things, helps take care of his son, and that Anthony doesn't really need that. But the home is now for sale, and you had to pay $10,000 to just get a look inside. Anthony did say he had to move out from that home in the middle of the night to avoid the paparazzi hunting him, jumping on his car, and following him everywhere. He did say that 20 apartments rejected him before he could find some place to live because of his name and, the involvement with all of this that he could possibly have. But he said that he believes he's lost more than Melissa's clients.
You're saying it's been incredibly difficult just to find a place to move to?
Yes.
So they knocked you back about 20 times?
20 times, yep.
No landlord wanted you in their property?
Correct. But it's been that process in everything that I've tried to do. Trying to get a job, getting on with everyday life, walking in the supermarket. You cop it from every which angle. Walking down the street, going to grab a coffee. People look at you like you're some kind of criminal or, it's just part of everyday life for me now. That's me. They have potentially lost a bit of their future, I get that. I've lost all of the above.
You think you've lost more than all of them?
Yes, I have. I know I have.
But it has been rumored that even more of the client's money is available but has been hidden. You see, 2 years after the disappearance, a whistleblower from Christian Dior came forward to say that some of Melissa's money has been held at the Dior's Sydney office. We don't know how much yet, but more and more money is slowly being uncovered and adding to the victims' fund, and I think that that's really all we can hope for in this mysterious case. So at this point, we are still left with questions, with more questions than answers, but I can't not tell you what happens when you look even deeper into Melissa's past, even deeper than we went prior. And it could be connected to the birth of this con artist. You see, back when Melissa was in her 20s, a relationship prior to Anthony, prior to Tony, she was dating this boyfriend that she had met at a bar. And her family had realized that things would go missing every time he would come over. They hired a private investigator and found that he was a con artist who preyed on young, naive women. When her family tried to tell Melissa this, she ended up running away with him, didn't believe her family. But not long after, she returned with maxed out credit cards after he had stolen everything. She had a broken heart, and Melissa was said to have a complete breakdown after this that would change her forever. And as she became just like this man that she hated, she had warned of exactly what she was planning to do in a magazine article that she was interviewed for. She claimed that one of the golden rules of finding the right financial advisor was to check if they were accredited, qualified, and ethical, and to watch out for Ponzi and pyramid schemes, no matter how great a deal they may look. This was 16 years before she would get caught, that she warned everybody what to look out for, which was her. Where do you think Melissa is? Did she really take her life and wasn't able to handle what was really being exposed about who she really was? Was she murdered for what she had done? Is she on the run? That is, I think, the one that most people want to think of, because it seems like this woman could get away with this for 16 years. She could get away with being on the run too and just evading police. And I think that's the one that people like to think of because it seems so ominous. It seems so just out of this world. But I don't know if that's the most likely one, and I'd love to hear what you think. Where is Melissa Caddick? Melissa seemed like a very messed up woman who ruined a lot of people's lives. And you just have to wonder, why? Was the money really worth it? Would she have changed everything if she could? I think the fact that some of her friends and family have come forward to say she did at least say things about suicide that could point to her having trouble with, mentally. It does seem like that could be a very strong possibility, and that she could have jumped the cliffs and Dover Heights, which is why there was no surveillance footage around the area, and then her body floated and then her foot floated further. But you never know, because with that being an area that Melissa was known to be at as a kid, that is something that some criminals do on the run. They will go someplace that they feel comfortable at, often something from their childhood, to, either hang out there for a while, often go back there, at least for some points. That is interesting that her foot would end up there. And I just wonder if that's a coincidence or not. But yeah, please let me know what you think, because this is just absolutely outrageous. And I just hope more and more money starts coming in for the victims. And, thankfully it wasn't just a bank full of people in poverty and people who could have really been homeless after this. Thankfully it was people with at least some money that were able to still continue living, though nobody deserves to have their money stolen from them. So don't forget to get 40% off of Lumi with the code Brooke at checkout. And yeah, don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.